Hello everyone, welcome to the June 4th Call of Duty DFS Slate breakdown. I'm still a little sick, so my voice and stuff is gonna still sound a little stuffy, but overall I'm feeling a little bit better, so should be a little bit more of a normal video. Probably will keep this one still a little bit brief, that way I'm just not exerting myself too much, but we can get right into it. So going over yesterday, we had these four matches on the slate, and I guess we could talk about this one here as well. But first up, we had London versus New York. London ended up getting the series win, although New York's players did end up performing a little bit better. In the respawns, specifically Hydra and Paul, Kismet and Crimsix did not really help out much. Although it doesn't show it in the stat sheet here, Afro actually had a really strong series. He made a lot of critical plays. Overall, New York still have not won a match at a major, which is crazy enough to think that they won the Pro-Am, but they have not won a match on LAN other than that the entire year, which is crazy to think about. Up next was LAG versus Optic Texas. This one kind of went according to plan, maybe not so much. I was very surprised LAG let Bocage through. Typically, this is the map they prioritize banning if the other team is decent on Bocage. I don't know why they let it through. I didn't think they looked that bad today. They just really didn't get much help from Asim or Gunless, especially on the Bocage. Then, of course, they got the job done the rest of the way. It was a humongous series from Dashy, pretty decent from Scump and Shotzi as well. I believe Dashy put up like 140 DK, Scump put up like 120. I think Shotzi and Broly were both like in the 110s or something. So triple stacking Optic would have been a pretty decent idea. I had Dashy in my captain spot until I made my final changes that ended up going a different direction. At this point, I was sitting kind of okay. I did have Dashy in my lineup, but not in the captain spot. Then we want to go over to this next one, Toronto versus Paris. This is where the decisions went poorly. So when it comes to maps, we actually had kind of really good maps. Bocage, Tuscan. This is kind of the best possible maps that you can get, in my opinion. It just so happened that they got smoked on the Bocage, specifically Insight. I had a couple Toronto players in my lineup. I had Kleenex captain, which was actually really strong. He was actually, I think, the second highest scoring player on the whole slate. I think... I don't know if you can check that actually on the DK thing here. I'll actually pull that up on a second monitor here, maybe. No, I guess not. I might have to post that later or something and look at that. But I believe he was like 140 DK points, and Dashy had like 144 or something. So I think Kleenex was number 2 overall, but overall relatively decent read. Toronto did end up getting the win, but their hard loss on Bocage really stifled their upside, and that's kind of the difference maker when it comes down to these close margins in these Call of Duty games. So yeah, that's all it came down to. It was actually pretty close margins, I think, in a lot of these. I'm trying to pull up the scores on my phone, so my apologies, but I just want to see how the players ended up scoring. So, actually, the 2 highest scoring players were actually in this series. Pretty interesting ones, although kind of not really. We had Havoc and Standy. They had 80 kills and 79 kills in a 3-0 sweep. Pretty crazy numbers. So, I'm going to read off kind of from top to bottom who had outstanding performances in terms of DraftKings scoring yesterday. So, Standy had 153, which is an incredible score. Havoc had 151, which is crazy. Dashy had 144. Kleenex ended up coming in at 127. I think his was wrong at the time. Scump had 124, but he was pretty cheap at 78. Havoc was 6.6. And then Shotzi was at 116. Pollux had 112, and he was at $7,800. Cammy came in at 112. Proloot 111. Gravity actually ended up having 110. Attach had 109, and then it kind of fell off from there. Then you had like Afro at 103, Temp at 100, Jimbo at 100. Like, so after those first few names, it kind of fell off pretty quickly. So we actually had like an okay shot. We just kind of picked the wrong players and stuff. This is the second series in a row that Standy's actually been performing pretty well, so that's something to keep note of as well. Havoc has been playing really well. I've been super, super impressed with this Minnesota team. So that's something we're going to keep in mind as we look forward. And then in the this was not on the DraftKings slate, but then in the next series between the loser bracket teams of London and Optic, is it losers? I'm not sure actually. Just in the bracket, we had Optic versus London. Optic had the 3-0. This is actually pretty close to being a map win for London. They were up 5-2, and then or 5-1 maybe, and then they ended up losing the whole map to Optic 6-5. And the respawn game modes weren't particularly close, but it's still been unprecedented numbers from Optic. Specifically, Dashy, he's been putting absolutely crazy numbers. It seems like he's on another level compared to everyone else at the moment. Scump's a little hit or miss. Same with Shotzi and Proloot. There's not as much trust there, but the numbers that they are putting up here are pretty incredible. If we were to translate this to DraftKings scoring, this would be 100 minus 36. What is that? 64. Right? Yeah, 64, and then plus 45 from the sweep bonus and stuff. So that would put him at 109, and then however much time he had in the hard point. So probably like again 115, 110ish, and pretty similar numbers here for Dashy and Shotzi as well. So again, pretty incredible scoring run that Optic have been on. So that's another thing to keep in mind as we look ahead to tomorrow. So I don't want to spend a little too much time here. I do like recapping stuff because it gives us a context of where we're at. Minnesota minus 150 versus Toronto. I agree with this price. I think this is a pretty close series. I'm pretty high on both of these teams. However, I'm sorry, my throat's still gone a little. So I'm still in on Minnesota. I think they're looking like a really, really strong team. I'd probably have them as like, as crazy as it sounds, I'd have Minnesota as a tournament favorite right now. I know it's probably still going to be phased in terms of the betting line and stuff, but I think Minnesota is looking like the most consistent, really strong team here. They're finally getting the performance that they've been needing from Standy. The consistency from Havoc has been pretty crazy. We know Attach's numbers have been crazy, but he's been putting up stuff as well. Priest has been kind of hit or miss, but as the fourth option, you don't need too much from him. So I'm leaning on Minnesota. I think this is a fair price, but the big difference maker here, for me, as we look at their stats here, I'm trying to look at team stats. Oops, I hit player again. We look at the team stats from Minnesota, Toronto. The big difference is just going to be those respawn game modes. We know we've definitely seen improvement, especially in the hardpoint from Toronto. However, it still has not been enough, especially in their control. As you can see, their controls, they're still 2-5. Their Search and Destroy is still pretty good. I would probably have them as favored in Search and Destroy, but again, that's not a game mode we look particularly too much into. I mean, Minnesota, they're 7-3 in hardpoint. Toronto's 8-5, which is still decent, but not that great. Then control is heavily in favor of Minnesota. They're 7-0. Toronto's 2-5 only in the controls, so definitely favoring Minnesota in the respawn game modes, and that's what we're looking for pretty heavily when it comes down to DraftKings scoring and stuff. So I've been liking Minnesota. They didn't get the job done here against LA Thieves, but that was a weird series in my opinion. I still think Minnesota's probably the tournament favorite, as a hot take maybe, but I've been super impressed with them. Again, I did pick Toronto to go for phase, but that's more of a phase fade than it was anything else. I'm still not entirely sold on FaZe. I think they've definitely looked pretty beatable lately, but that's a conversation for another day. So Toronto they've been decent. I think people are starting to overrate them a little bit because how good they were last year. They were a very strong competitive team last year. They were a team contending for titles. I think they ended up winning one or two maybe. I think one maybe. But after Toronto's struggles, they started picking it back up, and then I think people want to be too quick to give them credit here. Gee, sorry, I did not expect my voice to give out so quickly. So I'll try to speed run the rest of this here, I guess. But yeah, Minnesota respawns very strong. Toronto decent. I think this is gonna be a relatively close series, but I like Minnesota and all the respawns. I think their players are much stronger in that facet. Seattle versus Florida. This one's pretty interesting to me because all Seattle has done so far, at least this LAN, is they beat New York in 3-2, but we know that New York is not looking that great. Florida ended up beating LA Thieves in the tiebreaker, then they beat Texas on LAN. So it's really hard to kind of gather where these teams are. These are both two wildly inconsistent teams. So that puts a lot. Oh, sorry, I didn't mention Bocage from the last one, Minnesota Toronto. Sorry, I should have talked about that one. I'm honestly not sure where the picks and bans will be here for this one. I think there's definitely a possibility of Bocage, but this should be the first series of the day. So we should have the picks and bans out for this match in advance. Again, to get those, check Twitter at CDL Scrimtel, I believe. Maybe at CDL_metrics. One of those two Twitter accounts usually posts the picks and bans beforehand, when they get released. So, sorry. So keep an eye out for that. That's why I'm not going to worry too much about this one. I would expect Minnesota to ban either the Guatu or the Tuscan. That's what they typically go to. But who knows? Like Minnesota, I think ideally would ban Berlin. So I could definitely see Minnesota banning Berlin and then Toronto turning around and banning Gavutu. And then we get a Bocage Tuscan. So keep an eye out for that. I'll try to tweet it out if I remember. But remember, check those Twitter accounts. If not, just search on Twitter like 20, 15 minutes before lock. Look for these picks and bans. They're definitely going to be pretty important for the first series. We're not going to get them for the next two. But back to Seattle, Florida. I'm really, really torn. I'm really not sure where to go here. I would definitely lean towards Seattle in the respawn game modes. Although Florida, they have this win over Texas. I think they're pretty up and down. They rely pretty heavily on the individual skill of these players, and I'm just not buying into Florida yet. I do like them as a team, but this is a little bit too tough, I think, for me here. Jeez, I'm sorry, my voice is completely gone already. Yeah, I like Seattle in the respawns. They're really bad in the Gavutu hardpoint, but I expect that to be their ban. And then I expect Florida to ban Berlin. So I think this is going to be a really, really strong match setup here. Bocage Tuscan. I think that's the most likely scenario because I believe Seattle should ban Gavutu. That's what they usually ban. And then Florida either ban Berlin or Tuscan. Neither of these teams typically ban Bocage, so pretty high chance for Bocage, and I would expect Tuscan is going to be the map that ends up coming through. So Bocage, Tuscan, incredibly strong there. For control, I don't think either of these teams like the Voodoo controls. We're going to get either Berlin or Tuscan, which is really strong. So absolutely ideal map set here for Seattle, Florida. I definitely like both sides of this. Honestly, we can see an incredible upside from either of these sides. Honestly, in terms of pricing, you would have to favor the Florida pricing. So maybe if you want to go that route, I'm personally gonna hope everyone goes with Florida and goes with the numbers maybe, but I'm not sure. Again, I'm not an ownership guy. I say that all the time. I'm not an ownership guy. I don't know ownership. I'm really bad at predicting it, but I just have to side with Florida here or with Seattle here. There is some concern definitely for both sides. I feel like both of these teams are pretty inconsistent. So we could see a Seattle letdown and Florida continuing their kind of quote-unquote hot streak of beating Texas, Optic Texas, but I don't want to put too much stock into one series. I'm not too high on Florida still. And I think the map set is actually pretty strong for Seattle, so I'm going to lean with Seattle. Although they are a little bit pricey, it's not ideal to get to them, but yeah, I mean, looking at those Florida price tags, it's really hard to get away from Florida. Awakening at 8-2, he's probably one of the best players in the whole slate. Vivid at 6'4", like it's really hard to argue that playing Florida would be a bad play here, but I just have a feeling that Seattle's the better team, that Florida's maybe a little bit overhyped because of their win over Texas. Um, Granted, Seattle narrowly escaped New York, and they probably shouldn't have, so honestly don't know. I kind of feel like I'm talking myself a little bit into Florida, but I don't want to be swayed by the price tags too much, so I'm not sure really. Um, You know what? I'm not gonna overthink it. I'm gonna go with Seattle. That's my first lean, but I do not have a great level of confidence in this one at all. If you want to go in the Florida side and take the savings, I wouldn't blame you. Awakening and Vivid are definitely underpriced for sure. But I just have the feeling or kind of initial lean of Seattle here, so I'm not gonna overthink it. I'm just gonna go with my first lean. I'll go with Seattle. The last one, Atlanta, LA Thieves. So this one's pretty interesting because these are two teams who I personally think are pretty overrated, but obviously one's gonna have to win here. Jeez, sorry, I'm gonna have to really speed through this one. So Atlanta FaZe is a minus 350 favorite. LA Thieves plus 250 underdog. I really am not sure where to go here. I think you could definitely argue that the LA Thieves boys are probably just underpriced here, and I would probably have to go on that side. Um, Although again, I do think Atlanta FaZe probably win the series, but I definitely think these maps could be close, and I definitely feel like the players from LA Thieves, specifically Octane, he's 7,400, way too cheap. Draws at 6K, way too cheap as well. So I don't mind getting to them a little bit. Probably not going to have much of this series either way because LA Thieves ban Bocage. Atlanta FaZe probably ban Berlin. I'm sorry. Yeah, Atlanta FaZe probably ban Berlin. LA Thieves probably ban Bocage. So we're probably going to get a Gavutu Tuscan. I actually like LA Thieves' chances on the Gavutu, but FaZe are probably going to run the Tuscan just based on how recent results have been. So I think this is going to be a close series, one where either players from either side can come off, and I think you definitely would prefer the savings of LA Thieves in that scenario. So I think there's a pretty high chance, I think, of Bocage Tuscan. So I think ideally you would want the most of Seattle, Florida. We'll have that information on Toronto, Minnesota, when the time comes. So keep an eye out, check 15 minutes before lock. I'll try to tweet it, but if not, check Twitter elsewhere for that information. We'll have the picks and mans, the map set for Toronto, Minnesota. So if there is a Bocage, I'm definitely going to want to get a little bit more access to this series. I think ideally you'd probably just want to get in the middle of these two series if there is double Bocages. But if not, I don't think you'd be that crazy getting in a little bit of LA Thieves. Again, I'm not that confident in LA Thieves' ability to win this series. I'm not confident in that team as a whole. But I'm not confident in FaZe really either. I'm just kind of buying more into the LA Thieves players more than anything. So if we were to look at player stats, from the recency of the Major 3 qualifiers and Major 3 tournaments, so the regular season and postseason really of this kind of little season here. If we were to look at all of the teams, all the players, we have at the top, Dashy, Attach, Sib, Pred, Celium, Insight, Temp, Hydra, Havoc, Awakening. I'm surprised Octane's that far down. Actually, that kind of defeats the purpose of my point. I was gonna use this as an idea to show Octane's numbers, but he's actually been a little bit low. I guess his control numbers are dragging that down pretty heavily. But his hard point 1.19. He's been really strong. I think, especially on LAN. I think if we look at that. So yeah, Skies has been really strong. That's one series. Dashy, Awakening, Celium, Havoc, Mac. Like, again, wow, is Octane really not that far up here? Am I yeah, Octane, wow, he's actually been not as good as I thought he was. So that kind of defeats the purpose of my point. Hey, but it is what it is. I mean, I still feel like I'm kind of leaning that way either way. I just feel like this is a pretty close series. I'm not too confident in Atlanta FaZe at the moment. I'm not really confident in either side. if you're not if you're not confident in LA Thieves like that, like I am, like I'm probably not gonna have too much of this. Like at most I'd have Octane one off or maybe an Octane and Draza, in certain scenarios. But overall, I think if you want to leave this series off, that makes a lot of sense because again, I think this is gonna be a close series. I don't think the map set's gonna be really good. Um, I could definitely see a good case to leave off that series and load up on like Minnesota, who's not that pricey. Um, Havoc at 7.8, Attach at 8K, definitely affordable. Um, Seattle's a little pricey with Sib and Pred being at 10 and 9K, Mac at 8, accuracy at 6.8. So I don't think you have to get there. Maybe if you do again, kind of one off LA Thieves and get one Octane or get and Draza in if you need that little extra savings. But if we're to look at the kind of think the whole perspective here of the three teams that I'm leaning towards: Minnesota, Seattle, LA, Attach, Sib, Pred, Havoc, and then it's Octane. So after all these four, Attach, Sib, Pred, Havoc, then it would be Octane. Accuracy is not that bad. Priest is not that bad. Standy's actually been a lot better on LAN. That's something to keep a note of. Well, I don't think these have updated from yesterday, but if they were, Standy's numbers have been really, really strong on LAN. If we were to look at the how Minnesota's been so far. So far, Standy and Havoc have been the main two perpetrators. I guess he wasn't that great here in this series, but Havoc Attach, Standy Havoc. So yeah, I mean, there's definitely options, but this is what I'm going to be looking at. I don't love this slate too much. I'm probably only going to make a couple lineups. I'll probably do 3, but I'm going to be heavily invested towards one of them in terms of like single entry stuff. But I might have a couple other like smaller things. So in terms of like, I don't know, hypothetically, if I'm going to enter like, I don't know, $100 tomorrow, I'm going to have like 60 of it in one lineup and then 20 in the other two. And then the main one, I'm just going to, again, kind of load up on Seattle and Minnesota. I'm probably not even going to have any of this last series in it. Just again, because we talk about it so much, the bocage factor really doesn't matter that much. I think Seattle, Florida is going to have the best map set possible. I do think it matters that much. If I'll throw this out as a hypothetical scenario, I do think you can actually stack up Seattle, Florida, both sides of this. A little bit. Like if you wanted to do Sib Pred Awakening or even Sib Pred Skies Awakening, like if you want to play all 4 of these players in one lineup, it's possible only under the conditions that Toronto, Minnesota does not see a bocage. If there's no bocage in Toronto, Minnesota, there's a real chance that one of my secondary or tertiary lineups will have a Seattle, Florida stack in it, because I could definitely see all these players getting there in a close bocage. So I'll leave that. I'll throw that out there just in case. But for the most part, I'm going to be on Minnesota and Seattle pretty heavily. Maybe a sprinkle of LA Thieves, but I wouldn't count on it too much because I'm not loving that series. I don't like either of those teams. Their numbers are not that great. So that's where I'll leave it at for there. Yeah, I guess the only other things I'd mention here, I think Standy's numbers are a little bit better than what they show here. He's a little bit more of a vivid type player where he's a more in-your-face, more aggressive player. I would definitely avoid Envoy and Kenny. Mac's been a little bit better on LAN as well. I think we could look at that as well. I think he's I don't want to say a LAN specialist, but I guess that's not LAN. But he was better on LAN. So Sibpred and Mac were all pretty strong on LAN. You could definitely get there. I don't know if people will play him. Maybe he's like a decent third man in. I wouldn't avoid him. I wouldn't avoid anybody on Seattle, but you obviously want to prioritize Sib and Pred. I don't know. Whatever. I'm rambling too much now, and I really shouldn't be with my voice like it is. So I'll leave it as it is. Again, final touch-up. I like Minnesota. Keep an eye out for the picks and bans on that one. I like Seattle a lot, but keep an eye out on the Toronto, Minnesota bans, because if there's no bocage here, get a little weird with it. Throw in a little sprinkle of the Seattle, Florida stack. Just see what happens. Then I'm going to try to avoid LAT, or ATL, LAT, Atlanta, LA here a little bit. But if not, I'm going to might get a little bit like an Octane one-off, just because I think he can pay off that price tag, and hopefully they have a close enough series. I think Octane's numbers have been pretty strong lately, so I like Octane's individual upside there. Maybe draws at 6K, but that's like more of a dart throw kind of thing. So yeah, I don't think I'm getting particularly crazy here. These are probably going to be relatively popular plays. We're going with, I guess, technically two favorites and an underdog. With that said, I'm not all that confident like LA Thieves to win this series by chance. Like, I think it'd be a little surprising to most of us, but either way, that's where I'm leaning. Probably just going to end up having a good bit of Minnesota and Seattle, and then a sprinkle of LA. And we'll have to wait in picks and bans. I'll try to keep an update on Twitter. I'll have my Twitter in the description as usual. But if not, again, check out those Twitter accounts I mentioned earlier. They typically have those information out earlier. So that'll be it for me today. I don't think there's a Call of Duty slate tomorrow. Typically, it's how it goes. First couple of days, that's it. So I'll see you guys when I see you. I'm not sure what next video will be.